Hare Krishna. My apologies for being a little late. We were having some technical issues, but looks like they've been resolved now. So, thank you very much for joining us on this auspicious day of Karthik and Bhishma Panchak, and tomorrow being the last day of Karthik. So, I hope the Karthik has gone well for all of you. Uh, we'll start with the Manglacharan prayers. And before that, I just want to bring up the right verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtiki Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namine. So we are resuming our discussion from the first canto.
Prabhu?
Yeah.
Prabhu, you are muted on your phone line. If you can unmute your phone line.
I'm not muted. Can you hear me now?
No, Prabhu, I can't.
Is it okay?
No.
So phone is not muted because we were just talking on the phone.
Yep, yeah, Prabhu, it's working now. Yeah.
Okay. So we are resuming our discussion from the first canto, chapter 5, verse 24. Te mayapate kalala chapalar bhake dante drit kridante nuvartini chakru kripam yadyapi tulli darshana shushmane munyalpabhasini. Although they were impartial by nature, those followers of the Vedanta blessed me with a causeless mercy. As far as I was concerned, I was self-controlled and had no attachment for sports even though I was a boy. In addition, I was not naughty and I did not speak more than required. So this is a continuation of the verse or of the section of verses in which Narad Muni is describing his previous life. So just recollecting the flow, that Narad Muni initially came and he requested Srila Vyasadeva to write something that directly glorifies Krishna. And in order to substantiate that instruction, He's exemplifying it with his own life. So we had discussed that this is what Puranas are generally constructed as, that there is a tattva, and then the tattva is elaborated in a pastime, typically of a famous personality. So Anad Muni is following that format, that he has given an instruction, and now he is exemplifying that instruction, and in this case, with his own life in a previous day of Brahma. So so in the initial verse, he had talked about his own disqualification. So he had said that he was a mere boy, he was uninitiated in spiritual ways, he was a Dasi Putra. In this verse, he talks about the qualities that make him a suitable recipient for the mercy. And these qualities, even though he said I was a boy, but these qualities in general are considered to be favorable to make spiritual advancements. So he says that I am apitakhila chapale, not having undergone all kinds of proclivities. So chapal means fleeting. Chapal sukh. Material happiness is sometimes called chapal sukh because it's flickering, unsteady. And generally, the attention of small boys is chapal. But Narad says that he was different. He was apet akhila chapale. That he was not inclined to this short attention spans. He says he was not a naughty boy. Then he says that he was Dante. So Dante means having control senses. And this, of course, is one of the qualities that is often recommended for aspiring spiritualists, almost like a precondition to having control on the senses. And it is mentioned several times in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna, he specifically glorifies this quality. So in Bhagavad Gita, one of the main qualities that Krishna glorifies over and over again is that of detachment. And right from the second chapter, he starts talking about the importance of being detached. And close to that is the quality of having control senses. So in 264, 427, 13.8, 16.1, Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, he glorifies this quality of having control senses. Then Narad Muni continues that he was Adhrat Kridanke. So Kridanke, Krida, the root word is Krida. Krida means sporting activities. And in Adhrata, the root word is Dhrat. Dhrat is being strongly attached, like we see in the word Dhritarashtra. So Dhrita, he was strongly attached to the Rashtra. He was strongly attached to the kingdom. So Narad Muni says he was Adhrata, which means that he was not strongly attached to what? To Kridanake, to sporting habits. Srila Prabhupada makes the point that this indicates that he had still some attachment. So Adhrata means that not strongly attached. So when you negate the not strongly attached, one possible outcome is weakly attached. And Prabhupada picks on that, and he says in the purport, so the Vedantavadis initiated the boy even before he became self-controlled and was detached from childing, sporting, etc. So for the most part he was detached, but there was weak attachment over there. But Srila Prabhupada uses that to point to the glory and the munificence of the Vedantas. Then Narad Muni continues with his other qualities. He says that he was Alpabhasani. Alpabhashani means to speak, and Alpa means less. So again, this is a quality that is glorified several times. So does anybody recollect where is this quality glorified in? It's glorified at several places, but in one place it's prominently glorified. So it's glorified by Srila Rupa Goswami in Nectar of Instruction. In the very first verse, he says, Vacho Vegam Manasa Krodha Vegam. So Vacho Vegam means control of speech. And in the very next verse, he says there are 6 things that are detrimental to one's spiritual activities. And one of the Atyahara, Prayashasya, Prajalpa Niyamagra. Prajalpa is Prabhupada translators talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. So Nand Muni says that he was not in the habit of speaking more than needed. So another place Prabhupada says that devotee can speak all day as long as he's speaking Krishna Katha. That is okay. However, he has no time to talk about mundane topics. So the Vegam is more in the context of Prajalpa. So Narad Muni is continuing. He says that he is Anuvartini, which literally means that to follow. Anu means to follow in the footsteps. And following means to. So when you're following in the footsteps, then it means that you have to see the footsteps before you follow. So literally it means is to follow with intelligence, not follow blindly. So even though Narad Muni seems to be glorifying all these qualities in himself, but he wants to emphasize that that's not the reason why the sages gave this knowledge to him. So the point he's making is that there may be qualities that helped him, but they were definitely not qualities which in a way forced the sages to give him the knowledge. So in order to clarify that, he immediately says that the sages were Tulya Darshana. So Tulya Darshana means impartial, and impartial in this context is seen in 2 ways. The one is that they were impartial in the sense that they did not see his lack of qualification as a disqualification. The fact that he was a 5-year-old boy, uninitiated, Dasi Putra, they did not see that as a disqualification. Impartial also means that they were impartial in bestowing their mercy. So Krishna is also impartial by nature. So Krishna says in chapter 9, verse 29, he says, Samoham sarvabhuteshu, that I am the same to everyone. Name dveshasti na priya. And his devotees are also impartial. So in chapter 5, verse 80, Krishna glorifies his devotees as Pandita Samadarshana. That one who is learned is Samdarshan. But there is a difference in the equality of Krishna and the impartiality of Krishna and the impartiality of his devotees. So Krishna's impartiality is that if a soul ignores Krishna, Krishna will ignore the soul. If a soul approaches Krishna, Krishna will reciprocate. The impartiality of the devotees is different, that they will impartially approach everybody. And that's why Narottam Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Madhuri Kadamni, he says that the devotees are actually kinder than Krishna. Because Krishna, he will not impartially distribute his bhakti. He will only give his bhakti to those who are approaching him. But the devotees, they will also give the bhakti to those who are not approaching them. So this is the impartiality that Narad Muni is talking about. So Prabhupada in the purport he writes such Vedantavadis or Bhakti Vedantas are impartial in distributing the transcendental knowledge of devotional service. And then who did they bestow this upon? Narad Muni says, Shushrusru Mani, unto the faith, unto the faithful. Same word was used in the previous verse to describe Narad's service to the sages, that he was faithfully serviced them. So there is some pre-qualification that is needed, some kind of faith. So if you recollect the 9 stages of bhakti, it starts with Shraddha. It may be soft faith, it may be unsubstantiated faith, but some faith needs to be there. And we have that experience in our lives, that we approach so many people. Some people, they will completely reject us. Some people who have some faith, they open the ears and the hearts, and then the process starts. So Narad Muni is saying that I had some faith. But ultimately he says, Chakru Kripa, that causeless mercy. So that is the mood of the devotee. That what they bestowed was several times disproportionately larger than what the qualifications that Narad Muni had. That even though he had some faith, even though he was grave and sober, but despite all that, he's acknowledging that whatever they bestowed out of me was Chakru Kripa. So Prabhupada says that as such the Vedantavadis or the followers of the Vedanta indicate the pure devotees of the personality of Godhead. Such Vedantavadis or the Bhakti Vedantas are impartial in distributing the transcendental knowledge of devotional service. To them, no one is enemy or friend, no one is educated or uneducated. No one is specially favorable and not favorable. So ultimately, they bestowed upon Narad only because of Chakru Kripa, only because of their causeless mercy. And Narad uses the word Yadyapi, although to make this distinction in a mood of humility. That although the sages were Tulya Darshana, that means they were impartial, and although he had some qualities, but the real reason that they bestowed this knowledge upon him was because of causeless mercy and nothing else. So this verse talks about, so in this next set of verses, we'll see Narad Muni taking us through the different stages of bhakti. And this particular verse talks about the first stage of bhakti. Well, actually it talks about the first 2 stages of, the previous verse talked about the first stage of bhakti, which was Shraddha. And this verse talks about the second stage of bhakti, which is sadhusanga. Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay, we'll go to the next verse, which is Tulepan anumoditu dvijaha sakrat sma bhunje tadapastakil vishaha evam parvatasya vishuddha chetashas tadharmaivatma ruchi prajoyate. Once by their permission, I took the remnants of their food, and by doing so, all my sins were at once eradicated. Thus being engaged, I was purified in heart, and at that time, the very nature of transcendentalist became attractive to me. So Narad is describing the sequence of events that leads to his ultimate purification. So in the previous 2 verses, he has talked about Shraddha and Sadhusanga. Now in this, he is talking about a more experiential stage. So he says, first he took permission, anomidita. He took permission of the dvijas, and then he says bhunje, and then he ate the remnants of their foodstuff, uchista lepan. And the result of this was that the sins were eliminated. It says apasta kilvisha. And as a result of this, as a result of the sins being eliminated, his mind became purified. Vishuddha chetesha. So thus being engaged, he says, evam pravratasya. What happened next was atmaruchi, that attachment to dharma, to devotion, prajayati, that it manifested. So these are the sequence of events. That he took the permission of the Bhakti Vedantas, he ate the remnants, the sins were eliminated, his mind was purified, and then attachment to devotion manifested. So this whole process of purification through honoring remnants of other devotees is a very mystical process. It's in a way it's the basis of us offering bhoga to Krishna. So when we offer bhoga to Krishna, Krishna eats it by looking at it. So what we eat is the remnants of what Krishna has eaten. So that's why it becomes prasadam. Prasadam means mercy. So it becomes his mercy. And the devotees, because of their connection with Krishna, they also have the same quality. So when they eat, then what they eat becomes purified because of them honoring it. So it also acquires more spiritual potency. So this tradition of honoring remnants from of Vaishnavas is very strongly in the especially in the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, very strong there. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was famous for it. That he actually had made it like a mission to eat the remnants of the food of as many Vaishnavas as possible, whether they were willing or not willing. So in some cases where they were willing, he honored it with the permission. In some cases where they were not willing, he had his disciples steal it. And there's one particular pastime of a Baba called Vamsidhar, and he was a very exalted Babaji, but he was very particular about not leaving remnants out of humility. So whenever he would eat anything, he would eat to the last grain, and then just to make sure that nothing was left, he would wash everything thoroughly. And Bhakti Siddhanta was very interested in honoring his remnants. So he actually had his disciples stock the kutir of Vamsi Babaji, and for a while they waited and they could not get any remnants. And then one day, after honoring the remnants, he came out, he washed his mouth, and as is traditional, after washing the mouth, he spit out the water. And he went inside. And then the disciples, they saw that in that water, there were small remnants of the food that he had eaten. So they collected the remnants, they gave it to Bhakti Siddhanta, and Bhakti Siddhanta very happily honored it. So this is the potency of honoring Vaishnava Prasadam. Of course, this is not a substitute for sadhana Vaidhi Bhakti. So we should not think that just by honoring remnants, my life will be perfect. So there are two things. One thing is that we'll only honor remnants when we have the understanding of the potency of Krishna and his devotees. And in order to understand that, we have to be imbued in the culture of bhakti. And the second is that the result of honoring this remnants is that we execute our devotion even more sincerely. So it cannot be done as a vacuum. Sometimes people look for shortcuts and they say that just by honoring remnants, my life will be perfect. They will definitely make some devotional attachment, but it needs to be in the context of the overall execution of bhakti. So Prabhupada says that pure devotion is as much infectious in a good sense as an infectious disease. A pure devotee is cleared from all kinds of sins. The personality of Godhead is the purest entity. And unless one is equally pure from the infection of material qualities, one cannot become a pure devotee of the Lord. The Bhakti Vedantas as mentioned above were pure devotees. And as the boy became infected with the quality of purity by their association, and by eating once the remnants of the foodstuff taken by them, such remnants may be taken even without the permission of pure devotees. So Narad is talking about his progress in the path of bhakti. The previous two verses talked about Shraddha and Sadhu Sang. This verse talks about Bhajana Kriya. So he says, even pravratasya, thus being engaged, and it also talks about anartha nivriti. So Narad says, apasta kilbisha, my sins were eliminated. So sins are the anarthas. So this verse talks about two things, that engaged in the service of the Bhakti Vedantas, which is Bhajana Kriya, and by honoring the remnants, the anarthas being eliminated. And Prabhupada in this set of verses, he will two times talk about the progress of bhakti through the different stages. So here he is picking up from the stage of anartha nivriti. Later on he will start from Shraddha. So here he says, after the elimination of all sins, on the path of devotional service, anartha nivriti, which is anartha nivriti, he doesn't call out anartha nivriti. This is my annotation. One becomes attached. One can have steadiness, which is nishtha. One can have perfect taste, which is ruchi. One can have transcendental emotions, which is bhav. And at last, one can be situated on the plane of loving service of the Lord, which is prema. All these stages developed by the association of pure devotee, that is the purport of this stanza. So Prabhupada has taken this stage of anartha nivriti and he has given us a roadmap about what's coming. And we'll see that also as we go through the verses. We'll see that these different stages manifest in Narad Muni. So we'll do the next verse. Are there any questions, comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Are you hearing me? This is Paramatma.
I can hear you, Prabhu.
Okay. I just want to ask one question. Taking the remnants, does that mean taking the remnants of advanced devotees alone, or any devotee? Or put another way, by taking the remnants of advanced devotees, I'll have certain benefit, and if I take the remnants of neophyte devotees, it will be something different, or for every devotee is the same?
Thank you, Prabhu. It's a good practical question. So Prabhu, I do not have any Shastric reference to answer your question, but empirically, what I've seen is that one generally takes remnants from devotees who are more advanced than you are. So you are being that the person is. If a person is starting in Krishna consciousness, they may take with one who's practicing for a little while. If one is initiated, they may take from the Guru Maharaj. So that seems to be the general practice. I do not believe, and I'm speculating a little bit, Prabhu, because like I said, I don't have Shastric reference, I don't believe that taking the remnant of a neophyte will contaminate you. But perhaps the advancements are much more potent if you take from a more advanced devotee, because ultimately the reason that the prasad becomes potent is because of the connection of that particular devotee with Krishna. So the stronger the connection is, the more potency is imbued in that. So 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 that's my best take on it, Prabhu.
Thank you very much. It sounds very logical. I have a second follow-up question. Sometimes in our homes we don't have let's say installed deities that have that we perform, all the detail seva and like that. We just have a panchatattva, and with the with the panchatattva we do simple worship and like that. I'm inclined to think that by just taking the remnants of, let's say, deities that are installed and worship nicely, the remnant of such deities might be much potent than if I have a simple panchatattva and simple puja in my home. I'm a grihasta. It might be not as potent. Can you make some comment on that?
So so the quality that attracts the reciprocation from Krishna is that of faith and love. Generally speaking, they say that more elaborate worship is more potent, just because it is a symptom of more faith and more absorption in that. In the 11th canto, Krishna makes this point to Uddhav in Uddhav Gita, that as long as I am worshipped by faith, I can be worshipped in any one of these forms. And then he gives some options, like I can be worshipped in the mind, I can be worshipped in a painting, I can be worshipped in a deity, I can be worshipped in a form made out of earth. Main qualification, he says, is as long as one has faith. So my take on that would be that if somebody is worshipping Panchatattva with strong faith, then the potency will definitely be there. If somebody has elaborate installed deities, but not the same amount of faith, then the potency will not be there. So Krishna reciprocates to our love and to our love and faith. Having said that, again, I want to reiterate the original point that generally speaking, you're right, the situations of grihasthas and sometimes circumstantially, they may not be conducive to us to do elaborate deity worship or even simple deity worship. But generally speaking, as one's heart becomes more attracted to the process, one wants to do more. So it's just a natural progression. I remember listening to some lecture about I believe it was Radhanath Maharaj, and he was making this point that when a man approaches a woman, and as his affection for the woman increases, his activities also they become more and more elaborate. Initially, he may just give her a bouquet of, and this I'm embellishing from my end. It was not in the lecture. But initially, he may give a bouquet of flowers. Next time, he may give a more elaborate gift. Next time, he may give something more, and that just is taken as a symptom of an increase of affection.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, so we'll do 1526. Tatranvaham Krishna Katha Pragayatam Anugrayanena Shanvam Manohara Tatshradyame Anupadam Vishnavata Priya Shravasyanga Mama Bhavadruchi. O Vyasadev, in that association, and by the mercy of those great Vedantists, I could hear them describe the attractive activities of Lord Krishna. And thus, listening attentively, my taste for hearing of the personality of Godhead increased at every step. So Narad is now coming to the main point, that why is he sharing his previous life with Vyasadeva? That he's talking about the potency of Krishna Katha. So it was by the causeless mercy of the sages that he gets the opportunity to hear the pastimes of Krishna. And by hearing the pastimes of Krishna, he makes spiritual progress. So this is the reason that he is asking Vyas to write about the pastimes of Krishna, so that others can also relish it and make spiritual progress. So he is using his own life to talk about the potency of Krishna Katha. Now the source is important, the circumstances are important, but the most important thing is that because he heard Krishna Katha, he made so much progress that he became a liberated soul. So Prabhupada says that in the purport, Narad Muni has just explained this by his personal experience. The whole idea is that simply by hearing about the Lord's pastime, one can become one of the associates of the Lord. Narad Muni has eternal life, unlimited knowledge, and unfathomed bliss. So Prabhupada is talking about the Sat-Chit and Anand. He can travel all over the material and spiritual worlds without restriction. One can attain the highest perfection of life simply by attentive hearing of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord from the right sources, as Sri Narad heard from the pure devotees, Bhakti Vedantas, in his previous life. This is the process of hearing and the association of the devotees, especially recommended in the age of Kali. So this verse also talks about the quality of hearing. So Narad says that he heard. He says Ashnavam, Shanabam, that he heard. But then he says, how did he hear? He says Shraddhaya, respectful, with faith, and Vishnavata, attentively, at Anupadam, every step. So the hearing is also one that needs to be executed in a way that opens the heart. It needs to be, so one should hear with faith, respectfully. One should be attentive to the hearing, and one should be what's the right word? One should be chaste. That Anupadam means that this quality should be manifested at every point. So sometimes people hear selectively. That's some part they will say that yes, this makes sense. Some part they will reject. Then no, this doesn't make sense. We see that amongst people who translate Bhagavad Gita or who discourse on Bhagavad Gita. They say, I was having a discussion with one of my relatives in India about the relative position of the Devas. And I was talking to her about the verses in chapter 7 and chapter 9. And she said, yeah, Krishna says those verses, but he actually doesn't mean that. There are so many other verses where Krishna says that he is non-different from the Devas, which is part of the monotheistic philosophy. But this attitude of selective hearing and selective rejection, that destroys one's ability to get the nectar from Krishna Katha. So Narad then describes what is the quality of good Krishna Katha. He says that it is manahara, that it attracts the mind. And what is the result of it? He says, mama abhavat ruchi. That he says, mam, in me, abhavat. It resulted in ruchi. And again, he says, why? He says, anugrahena, by the mercy of the sages. So this verse talks about the ruchi stage of bhakti. Okay. Questions, comments?
Prabhuji, one question on this selective hearing thing. So we have like a lot of acharyas in our movement, and like they like differ in some sense from each other, in the sense that one acharya may be more liberal than the other. Another acharya may be more conservative in terms of following the varnashrama system. Another acharya may be saying that varnashrama is like a tool that will help in this in advancement, but that's not the goal. So like when we talk, but we are attracted more to those that uh, basically resonate to our nature and our inclination probably. So like how so me personally, I'm like uh, so like if I don't want to listen to like a more traditional kind of uh, speaker, then am I doing that selective listening thing, or how can I avoid that attitude?
Sure. Thank you. It's a very good question. So that's why it is said that one must be chaste to one's sampradaya, and within the sampradaya, one must be chaste to one's guru. So once Prabhupada, somebody was quoting some verses to Prabhupada to make a point, and Prabhupada said there are so many verses. And again, the purport of that was that the Vedas are vast and variegated, and there are many different ways that the verses are understood, interpreted, and practiced upon. So he was very very insistent with his disciple that do not read other books. When his disciples came to Vrindavan, he was very strict in his instructions that don't associate with the Babajis. Because when his early disciples came, they had in their mind that these are Vrajvasis, they're eternal associates with the Lord. And some of his disciples actually, they left ISKCON and they became Babajis. And nobody knew what happened to them after that. So Prabhupada was in that mood, not because he wanted to be monopolistic, but he wanted to make sure that this fidelity to the instructions and the execution is always there. So coming back to the specific point that you hear from somebody, and maybe you're not inspired by that. It depends on who that somebody is. If you're listening to somebody in the Sri Sampradaya, it's okay. It's okay to depending on the stage of maturity in your devotional life. In my own personal experience, I have this, and my wife says, bad tendency to read a lot. So I would read Ramanujacharya's commentary on the Gita, and earlier on, Guru Maharaj he did not encourage it. He said, you first finish Prabhupada's books and then try and read others. And then later on, I mean, it's not that I've finished Prabhupada's books. I don't think anybody can finish the books. But later on, once I again asked him in a slightly different context, and then he said, yeah, it's fine. You can read as long as you can reconcile them with Prabhupada's teaching. So at that point, he was a little bit more confident that I would not read and get bewildered by it, but I can reconcile it with the teachings. So it all depends on what your. I mean, firstly, of course, if you have any confusions, you should go to your Guru Maharaj and and get them reconciled. The instructions of your Guru Maharaj trumps everything else. And the Guru Maharaj is a representative of Srila Prabhupada, who's a representative of our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. So that's where our primary fidelity is, to our Sampradaya and our Guru Maharaj. But within that, it is, if we can reconcile without getting bewildered, it is okay. Does that help?
Yeah, Ruchi, but I mean, I'm talking about even within our movement, like, I mean, there are differences of opinions. Like, I mean, I'm just giving a very simple example of, like, say, for example, eating chocolate. So the GB passed a resolution that, those who want to eat chocolate, they can eat chocolate. Those who don't want to, they can, keep, avoid it. But they, like, but earlier it was, some are like for it, some are against it. Even within our movement.
Right.
I mean, it's just a very small this thing, but I mean, of course, there are more bigger differences that we have.
There is different. So you're initiated, right?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. So different gurus have slightly different moods, and again, that's perfectly fine, because devotional life, spiritual advancement, it's a very, very personal thing. The reason we are attracted to a particular guru and the guru accepts us, because there is certain resonance of the moods. I remember, I'm going back to 20 years. I was in Gita Nagari, and I wasn't initiated at the time. So Bhakti Charu Maharaj, we happened to be alone at the time, and then we were just talking. So then I asked him the question, because it was heavy on my mind. I said, Maharaj, how do I know who to take a shelter of? Because I'm, for better or for worse, Washington DC area at that time. Now things are different. At that time, it was very, very fertile in terms of the number of sannyasis who were here. We had a resident sannyasi, Mukund Maharaj. Rampad Maharaj visited very regularly. Bhakti Tirth Maharaj was here all the time. Ravindra Sarup Prabhu was here. So we were fortunate that we had association of a lot of initiating gurus, but in me it was also creating confusion. And Bhakti Charu Maharaj, he said that you should look at two things. You should look at the fact that you will be able to follow the instructions that are given to you by this personality, and you should, in your heart, be assured that he will take you back to Krishna. And he said, whenever these two things come true, it means that you found your guru. So coming back to the point you were making, is that there are different sannyasis, there are different gurus, they have different moods, they may give different instructions, but what matters is what your guru says. That's the instruction for you. Like Prabhupada would say that the world is full of beautiful women, but the only woman for you is your wife. It doesn't matter if there's another woman who's better looking or sings better or cooks better. Your wife is the only woman for you. So your guru is the is the person that becomes the final reconciling authority. In some cases, the gurus, if the disciple is, they see the disciple as mature, they will bestow more latency, they'll be more liberal to the disciple, saying that fine, you can do this, you can do that. In some cases, they will not. And this variegatedness of instructions, it does not mean that there is confusion on the part of the guru, or the instructions are not are equivocal. It just means that there is a relationship that is very, very specific between the guru and the disciple, and the instructions are being given in that. It's like the famous example of Prabhupada, that he gave two of his disciples sannyas, and one disciple who make a sannyas, he said that you should not stay in one place for more than 3 days. You travel all over the world and preach. And he said, Jai Srila Prabhupada left the room. The other sannyasi disciple came, and Prabhupada said that you should live in the temple only. Don't travel, serve the deities, and live in the temple. And he said, Jai Srila Prabhupada, and left. And Hari Swari Prabhu, he recounts this. He was a servant of Prabhupada at the time, and he asked him that, why are you giving different instructions? And Prabhupada said, because of the different propensities. The first one by nature is a preacher, and the second one by nature is a pujari. So I'm trying to position them in a way that is most conducive to them. So specific instructions will change, general instructions will not change. So it's not that one guru will say that you follow only 3 regulative principles, another guru will say that there are 5 regulative principles. It's not that one guru will say that Krishna is God, another guru will say that Narayan is God. So within the sampradaya, the consistency in the tattvas will be there, but details in practice, they will vary. Like in the Pujari department is very, very fertile in terms of interpreting these instructions. That should the incense stick be offered 4, 2, 3, 7? What about the hanky? Should it be 7 or should it be 4, 2, 3, 7? Putting rest to the deities should be that. And pujaris get very, very animated. They have a lot of very, very heated discussions. And again, when Narsingh Kavach Prabhu was here, he's the GBC for deity worship. And he was essentially reconciling with this, that the essence of worship is love and devotion. As far as possible, stay consistent. At least stay consistent in the temple. But small details, he said, can change here and there. So I gave a long-winded answer, and actually, to some extent, I'm not. So did I address your question to some extent?
Yes, Ruji. Basically saying that details are it's okay to basically have differences in the details, but not in the core principles or like core essential fundamentals, basically.
Yeah, pretty much, and yes, and like I said, that gurus will have varied. Like Gopal Krishna Maharaj, when he initiates his disciples, he also asks them to take the vow to chant 25 rounds on Ekadashi.
Yes.
Right, and other like Rampad Maharaj doesn't do that. Some other sannyasis, they ask for some other, not really as a vow, but they ask for some. Mukund Maharaj, he asked for this. Well, he stopped initiating for a long time, but when he did, he would ask for this additional vow that you will stay true to Srila Prabhupada and ISKCON in the complete sense for the rest of your life. And he would make sure that the person repeated it and understood that instruction. So these are embellishments, but the basic contract was essentially the same.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Anything else on this topic? Okay. So So we'll do 1527. Tasmin stada labda ruchir mahamate priya shravasya asakhlita matir mama yaham etad sadasat swamayaya pashe mai brahmani kalpitam pare. O great sage, as soon as I got a taste of the personality of Godhead, my attention to hear of the Lord was unflinching. And as my taste developed, I could realize that it was only in my ignorance that I had accepted gross and subtle coverings, for both the Lord and I are transcendent. So the previous verse talked about Ruchi, and this verse, it's clear. So he says, Priyashravasya Ashaklita. It talks about Asakti. So the next stage of Bhakti after Nishta Ruchi is Ashakti. So Narad says that Tasmin Tada Labda Ruchir. So here is pointing to the previous verse. That having attained the stage of Ruchi, he advances to Askalita Mati Priyavarshi, unflinching attention upon the Lord. So Sridhar Swami, he comments on this verse, and particularly on the words was Asaklita Matir, which he defines as Vyavasatmika Buddhi, which he says is firm and fixed intelligence. So we are familiar with Vyavasatmika Buddhi as one of the famous verses that comes in Bhagavad Gita 241. Vyavasatmika Buddhi Eka hai, Kuru Nandana. So he calls that out as a quality of Ashakti. And he says that because of this Asakti, he experienced the strength of intelligence as soon as he gained Ruchi. So he's talking about how Asakti naturally flowed from Ruchi. So as we know, when we talk about the various stages of Bhakti, that till the point the Anartha Nivritti stage is reached, it is a lot of prayas, lot of effort from the part of the devotee. It's like going uphill. Everything is pulling you down. Everything meaning all your anarthas are pulling you down. After you cross the stage of Anartha Nivritti, then it's like going downhill. That the stages then naturally propel you into higher stages. So Sridhar Swami, he calls this out over here, saying that having crossed Nishtha, because he was in Ruchi, he naturally flowed into the stage of Ashakti. So so Nad Muni also refers to his stage of to his continuing disappearance of anarthas. So as we had discussed, and this we had discussed elaborately in our discussion on the first canto, second chapter, verse 20, we had talked about the various stages of anartha nivritti. That from partial it goes to complete, and from complete it goes to absolute. So even though earlier on Narad indicated that by honoring the prasadam, he became anartha nivrit, but anarthas stay. They actually stay all the way till bhav and prem. So he talks about the continuing dissolution of anarthas. And the symptom at this stage of the dissolution of anartha is that so one of the symptoms of anartha is ignorance. So he was saying the ignorance because of which, so he says swamayaya. He says my ignorance by which I accepted my body to be myself, the gross or subtle body to be myself. He says that under the influence of bhakti, it disappeared. So he says that, and what was the result of that disappearance? He says, Pashyamai Brahmani Kalpitam Pare. That as a result of this, I realized that both the Lord and I are transcendent. So when that anarthas disappear, it's kind of like the rising of the sun. So when the sun rises, then one sees the sun, one sees oneself, and one sees the surrounding. So similarly, when the ahankar disappears, then one sees the self as the soul, one sees Krishna as the eternal, and one sees everybody around themselves also as souls. So Srila Prabhupada, in the purport, he talks about a more practical way of dissolving the gross and the subtle bodies. So he says that the gross body should be engaged in acts of rendering service to the Lord, as in bringing water, cleansing the temple, making obeisances. The path of Archana or worshipping the Lord in the temple involves engaging one's gross body in the service of the Lord. Similarly, the subtle body should be engaged in hearing the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, thinking about them, chanting his name, etc. All these activities are transcendental. None of the gross and subtle senses should otherwise be engaged. Such realization of transcendental activities is made possible by many, many years of apprenticeship in the devotional service, but simply attraction of love for the personality of Godhead, as it was developed in Narad Muni by hearing, is highly effective. So, Srila Prabhupada is, so he's doing two things in the purport. That one is that he's giving a practical way for us to remove that ahamkar, which he says that you engage your gross body in the service of the temple, the deities, and example is cleaning, washing, serving the deities. You engage your gross body in hearing the pastimes about the Lord, thinking of them, etc. And then he says that all this can start simply by hearing. So if one were to just do it, he says that it takes many, many years of apprenticeship. So one may start the devotional life by serving in the temple. One will still make progress, but the progress will be slow. So one may use the gross body in cleaning the temple. One may use the subtle body. The subtle body is a little bit of an overlap. But the point Prabhupada is making is that all this is very easily accessed and very effective simply by Krishna Katha. Okay, so we'll do the next verse. Any questions on this? Next verse. Itham sharad pravashika ritu hare vishnavato me anusavam yashamalam sankirtayamanam munabhir mahatmabhir bhakti pravratatma rajas tamopaha. Thus, during two seasons, the rainy season and autumn, I had the opportunity to hear these great souled sages constantly chant the unadulterated glories of the Lord Hari. As the flow of my devotional service began, the covering of the modes of passion and ignorance vanished. So this verse talks about the destruction of Rajas and Tamas. And this is a symptom of Bhav and Prem. So the next two stages of Bhakti. So he says that during the two seasons. So at least in India during the early time, now I guess there are not that many seasons. There used to be 6 seasons, each season comprising of 2 months. So there was the Vasanta Ritu, which was from mid-February to April. There was which is the spring season. There is the Grishma Ritu, which is the summer season from mid-April to June. There is the Varsha Ritu or monsoon from mid-June to mid-August. There is Sharad Ritu, mid-August to mid-October. Then there is the Hemant Ritu, which is pre-winter, mid-October to mid-December. And then there is the Sheet Ritu, which is winter, from mid-December to mid-February. So the Chaturmasya, it spans 2 seasons. It spans the Varsha, which is the monsoon, and the Sharad season. So Nadmuni says, Pravrishkav. Pravrishkav is the rainy season, and then he says the Sharad, which is the autumn season. So it can be understood that the sages lived in the house of Narad from mid-June to mid-October for 4 months. So it's not clear whether the sages actually lived in the house of Narad, because elsewhere it says that they lived in the house of the Brahmans that were being served by the mother of Narad Muni. So I think it's a small distinction, because she was a maid servant, so she probably lived in the same house, but it does say that in the house of the Brahmins. So so this verse glorifies the Bhakti Vedantas as Munibhi, who were Mahatmabhi. So he said they were great sages who were great souls. So Krishna glorifies, he said, Bhunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyante Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sa Mahatma Sa Durlabha. So they were this kind of Mahatma, that Vasudeva Sarvamiti, that they had realized that Krishna was everything. So another interesting point is that in the previous verse, Narad had addressed Vyasa as Mahamate. He had said that, O great soul, O Mahatma, he had said. In this particular verse, he's addressing the Bhakti Vedantas as Mahatmabhi, as same thing as great souls. So in a way, he's pointing out that you are also like the Bhakti Vedantas, and therefore you can also, the Bhakti Vedantas liberated me, but you're also like the Bhakti Vedantas, so you can liberate the general mass of people by addressing both with a similar salutation. He's in a way he's planting that seed in the heart of Srila Vyasadeva, that you are also a Mahatma. So like the Bhakti Vedantas, you should also propagate Krishna Katha. Srila Prabhupada, in one of his lecture, he talks a little bit about Mahatma. So lecture on this particular verse. He says, Mahatma means those who have finished this material business. Simply, they are not interested. They are interested with Krishna. The Guru must be Mahatma and Muni. Muni means thoughtful philosopher, not foolish rascal manufacturing some philosophy. And Mahatma be not only self-realized by his character, by his behavior, by his understanding, he must be a Mahatma. So how does one take advantage of association with the Mahatma? Nand Muni says in this verse, he says that Anushava, constantly, Vishnavata, continuously hearing. Hearing what? Yashaha Amalam, unadulterated glories of who? Hare or Hari, of Krishna, that are Sankirtayamanam, that are chanted by them. So that is the mood of having a association with the Mahatmas, that is potent, that it is constant. So if you remember the previous verse, he said Anupadam. So Anu means to follow, and constantly following. Anushavam means constantly, and Vishnavata is hearing. So the most potent association with a great personality is by Shravana. Prabhupada would say that better than Vapu is Vani, because Vapu comes and goes, but Vani is always there. And Admuni is making the same point, that this is how I benefited from their association, by continuously hearing from them the unadulterated glories of the Lord that they chanted. And what was the result of this? He says that Rajatama Upaha, that the modes of passion and ignorance vanished. So Narad does not mention the mode of goodness that vanishes, even though the mode of goodness is a material mode. But there are two reasons that he does not mention the vanishing of the mode of goodness. One is that he is being factual. So factually speaking, as we will see later on, Narad Muni still retained the traces of mode of goodness. And that is the reason why he could not get complete association with the Lord, because he still was attached to the mode of goodness. And the second is that even though the devotees, they are not dependent on the mode of goodness, as they make advancements, they still retain the mode of goodness as a tool to execute bhakti. So they may give up, or they will give up modes of passion and ignorance, but they will still retain the mode of goodness, because it is conducive to bhakti and it is also conducive to preaching. So things like cleanliness and being organized, being fixed, being truthful. So all these qualities of the mode of goodness, the devotees will still retain for these two reasons: that they're conducive to bhakti and they're conducive to preaching. So Prabhupada in a lecture to this verse, he says, Muni means that they are silent, maunya, about material affairs. They are simply interested with spiritual advancement of life. So another time Srila Prabhupada says Munis are those who mentally, who agitate their mind, mana. So he says that they are mental speculators. But in this he is saying the Munis are Maunis. So important thing is the context. In this particular context, the Muni is being glorified because of the detachment from material affairs. And so this is in his commentary on the verse Sthitadhir Muni Ruchyate. He says Munis are by nature speculative. But a Sthitadhir, one who does not speculate, who does not agitate the mind, he has a quality of being a devotee. So Satsaru Maharaj on this verse, he says that Srila Prabhupada describes the flow of devotion and how it awakens in any soul. The pure devotees are already flowing with bhakti and nothing can stop their expression of it. As the river flows towards the sea, the devotees flow unto the ultimate goal of transcendental love, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If an onlooker even observes a free-flowing devotee, his own blocks will be washed away and he will become free of the material modes of passion and ignorance. Then he too will begin to flow towards the goal. This is the quality of preaching. That preaching does not always mean that one has to. So who was it? Either it was Bhakti Siddhanta or Bhakti Vinod Thakur who said that devotees should always preach, and once in a while they should speak. So the point they were making is that preaching is not always speaking. Most of the preaching is done by setting up an example and by inspiring the other person. So Satsaru Maharaj is making that point over here. So I didn't realize I actually went over 9:15. So I'll stop over here and see if there's any questions or comments or discussions.
Prabhuji, actually, I have a question on the previous verse. verse 27.
Okay.
So in the purport, I mean, where it says, like, both grass and saddle coverings, um, 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 trying to find in the purport, but I think it says right that the grass and, like you mentioned, like grass and subtle sense, um, like ignorance is removed from the gross and subtle senses, um, by engaging them in the service of the Lord. So like the gross, how are the gross senses ignorant? I mean, and like, isn't that more internal? Isn't that more how we think that we are not this, like, we are this body and not the spirit soul? That is ignorance, like that. But that's my mind that is thinking, or that's like my internal thing that is thinking. How is it that the gross is covered by ignorance? I'm just trying to understand.
Right. I think your understanding is right. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what context I said, but when in this particular verse, when Narad Muni talks about the removal of his ignorance, so he's talking about the ignorance as a result of which he accepts the gross and the subtle body to be his self, which means that he was identifying with his body. So that was the ignorance that was removed. So specifically, what he says is that that at this stage, the ignorance by which one accepts the gross and the subtle coverings as the self, which is the Swamayaya, that was removed. And as a result of that, he said that I realized that both the Lord and I are transcendental.
So when we are engaging in when we are engaging our gross body in the service of the Lord, in terms of cleaning the temple and things like that, does it also help in removing the ignorance of the subtle body? Like, is there a correlation between gross and subtle in that sense? I mean,
So in terms of ignorance, ignorance of association, so there is a certain class of people who consider themselves to be the body. That this is me, the five elements. And then there are certain people who are a little bit more advanced, but still ignorant, who consider themselves to be the subtle body. They may see that the gross body is changing, or they may see that uh, uh, the influence of the gross body is not very strong, but they may identify with the subtle body, which means they may identify with the mind or the intelligence. So the point that's made over here is, which Srila Prabhupada makes in the purport, is when you engage your gross body. So ultimately, what is being rectified is your mentality of considering that to be your self, and this is again a progressive stage. Uh, it's relatively easier to detach yourself from your gross body. From the subtle body, it's a little bit more difficult. But what Srila Prabhupada is talking about is not the purification of the gross body or the subtle body per se, because they are what they are. The gross and the subtle body, they are ultimately they are products of the material world. So uh, they won't change their nature per se, except for advanced devotees, where because they engage the gross body completely in the service of Krishna, their body is considered to be spiritualized. But that's a slightly different case, where, because the example of iron and fire, that even though the gross body is material, because it's so closely associated with Krishna, it's considered spiritual. But what Prabhupada is talking about in this purport, really saying is that the mentality of the person by which he associates his own self with the gross or the subtle body, that gradually goes away as one engages the gross and subtle body in the service of Krishna.
Okay, got it, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice question.
So, Prabhuji, one very quick follow question. So, so if, for example, if I'm very bodily conscious and I know that I'm more bodily conscious than, like, say, for example, I'm associating with my mind or intelligence. So, does it mean that I should engage more in physically serving Lord than mentally serving the Lord in terms of more reading or more chanting?
That's a good question. So I think it means that the best cure is at the root. So what it means is that we take shelter of that which is causing us that causing us that particular conception. So regardless of whether your bodily conception or spiritual or subtle conception, the root cause is that the tattva gyan is clouded, and we know the process to rectify it. So we know that by chanting the names of Krishna, we know by serving the devotees, we know by reading the scriptures, by satsang. All these are potent ways in which that particular mentality can be rectified. So the processes that the Vaishnavas have given us are so they're not that much anchored into specific symptoms. They're more anchored into rectifying the cause. That this is the cause by which one identifies with the body or the soul. This is the cause because of which one may have aversion to Krishna. This is the cause because of which one may not take to bhakti. And that's to a great extent what Narad Muni is preaching over here. That to Krishna Katha, these things will go away. And as they go away, we develop a taste for performing different kinds of service. So you're right, there are some devotees who are more inclined to do service by, so to speak, the gross body. They like cleaning the temple, they like cleaning the bathrooms, they like building for the temple, and that's their mood. And some devotees like giving classes, like doing deity worship, and that's their mood. But in a sense, that's just their expression of bhakti, according to their propensity. Prabhupada would say that the person on the altar and the person cleaning the bathroom, they're making the same level of spiritual advancements. So, so it's not that one serving through the body is in any way inferior or superior to one who is serving more from the subtle body. What matters is that how is one situated in that particular path of devotion.
Sure. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Can you hear me?
Yes, Sarang Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, I would just add something or comment on this. We have seen that many devotees, they come, they do a lot of seva, but if they don't have the philosophical background behind it, and then one time they can get burned by physical endeavor, but they don't know we say that the backbone of our spiritual life is sastric evidence or sastric study that will keep us stand, even in time of, like, sometimes you get fried. You heard about this expression, you get fried by service, but if we know why we are doing it, then we won't get fried. I think philosophical or hearing, or when we say hearing, here is also studying the Shastra that will give us understanding to maintain our physical endeavor.
Yes, Prabhu. You're absolutely right. The 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 path from soft faith to more firm faith is to a great extent it is powered by Tattva Gyan, and that is what protects us when the circumstances become adversarial, when things don't go as you're expecting, and then that becomes our safety net. So it is a strong factor, but not the only factor. So along with the study of the Shastras, one should chant, one should serve devotees, worship deities, the five things that Rupa Goswami mentions. If we just study the Shastras, then we'll become mental speculators. So if you're studying, we'll become Gyanis. So if we study the Shastras, then the natural conclusion is that we practice what the Shastras tell us. And Prabhupada will say and distribute that knowledge also. He says, Prabhupada, at one point he says, if you hoard knowledge, then it will contaminate you. Just like a miser who's holding gold, finally the gold becomes the cause of his downfall. So this is very important that when you get knowledge, you give knowledge. So like they say, the 6 qualities of the Brahman is Patan, Patan, Yajan, Yajan, Dan, Parikriya. So the first two, Patan and Patan, is reading and teaching.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so I see we are out of time. So we'll end over here, and I look forward to being with you next week. Vancha kalpatarubhayaschet kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanand. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.